I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I always considered myself pretty observant. Nothing escaped my notice for long. My wife Emily and I had been together for about 10 years. We had our ups and downs, sure, but we'd managed to keep things stable, or so I thought. She was the kind of woman who, on the surface, seemed perfect, beautiful, smart, confident. But she also had this bitchy streak that could turn on a dime, especially if she didn't get her way. She was manipulative when she wanted to be, and she knew how to twist words around you until you doubted your own judgment. Things started feeling off a few months ago. Small things at first. She was more irritable, distant even after work. She'd go out with friends, but I'd notice she'd come home later than usual, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, or she'd be overly defensive if I asked where she'd been. I chalked it up to stress, work, maybe just burnout. I didn't want to jump to conclusions because I hate drama, and I really wanted things to stay normal. But deep down, I had this nagging feeling that something was wrong. Then came the weekend when everything fell apart. Emily and I signed up for one of those marriage therapy retreats, an intensive weekend designed to help couples reconnect. She was all for it, acting like this was our last shot. I was hopeful, thinking maybe it'd bring us closer. She had been acting odd during the lead-up, a little more snippy than usual, snapping at me over small things. Still, I tried to ignore it. I wanted to believe we could fix what was broken. The therapy started on a Friday afternoon. We checked into the place, a quiet lakeside resort with a lot of woods around. The first day was intense, full of exercises, talking, sharing feelings. Emily was, as usual, charming to everyone. She played the perfect wife, smiling, engaging, acting like she cared. But I caught her stealing glances at the therapist, Mark, more than once. I didn't think much of it initially. Maybe she was just nervous or trying to impress him. But as the day went on, her behavior grew increasingly inappropriate. She touched her hair more than usual, leaned in when Mark asked questions, and her voice had this flirty undertone that didn't sit right with me. By Saturday, I was starting to feel like I was losing grip on what was real. During one of the break sessions, I saw Emily slip her phone out of her purse. She was texting. I could see the glow in her hand. I didn't want to be suspicious, but I had this instinct. I watched her quietly as she typed, her thumbs flying over the screen. The messages were quick and casual, but the tone was too familiar. I managed to glance at the phone when she got up to stretch. The chat was with someone named Chris, and they were talking about meeting up that night. She mentioned she was staying at the resort, but the way she phrased it, it sounded more like a cover story. I felt a cold wave hit me. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it. My wife, Emily, potentially cheating on me right in front of my eyes during a weekend supposedly dedicated to fixing us. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I started paying closer attention, watching her reactions, listening to her conversations. That night, I stayed up, watching her from the doorway of our room, hearing her whispering on the phone, laughing a little too loudly, giggling when she thought I wasn't listening. I was stunned. This wasn't just a flirtation. She was sneaking around, lying straight to my face. The next morning, everything felt different. I was numb but also furious. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want to rush. I needed to gather more evidence, figure out what her game was, and decide how I was going to handle it. But one thing was clear. Emily wasn't just distant, she was actively cheating on me. I didn't know how deep the betrayal went, but I knew I wouldn't let her get away with it. Not without a fight. That Sunday morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a freight train. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd observed the night before. Emily was still sleeping, her back turned to me, her breathing even, so normal, so innocent looking. But I knew better. I knew she was hiding something, and I didn't want to sit around pretending everything was fine. I decided to finally confront her, even if I wasn't sure how she'd react. I waited until she stirred, then casually asked if she wanted some coffee. She sat up, rubbing her eyes and giving me that typical I don't want to talk look that she often used when she was annoyed. I took a deep breath and asked her, "Hey Emily, I saw your messages last night. Who's Chris?" Her eyes flickered for a moment and then she quickly scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, that, just a guy from work. Nothing serious," she said, brushing it off with that annoying, dismissive tone she always used when she was lying. "You're reading too much into it. We're just friends, okay? It's not a big deal." I was furious, but I kept my cool. "You're lying," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "I saw the messages. You're sneaking around, texting him late at night, lying about where you are. I deserve to know what's really going on." She scoffed again, flipping her hair dismissively. "God, you're so paranoid. It's just sex, all right? No big deal. Sometimes people need to do stupid stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. You're overreacting, as usual." That last part cut me deep. She always dismissed my feelings. Made me feel crazy for caring. I've been patient, trying to give her space, but this was something else. I felt my heart pounding, a mixture of hurt, anger, and betrayal. I knew I had to get her to admit the truth, no matter how much she lied. I pressed her harder, asking if she was seeing this Chris guy, if she had been with him. She rolled her eyes again, her voice dripping with contempt. "Yeah, I've seen him a few times. Big deal. It's just sex, like I said. You're not the one satisfying me anymore, okay? That's why I had to find someone else." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, in her bitchy tone, throwing some excuse about her needs and me not being enough. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I wanted to explode, to scream at her, but I held back. Something inside me snapped. I realized she had been lying this entire time. She'd been cheating on me for who knows how long. Maybe even during those therapy sessions. Maybe even during the weekends I thought we were working on us. The betrayal was so raw, so intense I could hardly breathe. I knew I had to think fast. I couldn't just confront her and lose my mind. I had to plan what I was going to do next. So I took a deep breath, told her I needed some fresh air, and left the room. I went for a walk around the resort, trying to clear my head, but nothing could wipe away the image of her lying there, so nonchalant, so dismissive of my feelings. I was hurt, honestly shattered. I'd always believed in us, in her, and now I was starting to wonder if she had ever cared at all. The worst part was knowing she'd been lying to me all this time, and that the woman I thought I knew was just a mask she wore to hide what she was really doing behind my back. I spent the next hour walking around the resort grounds, trying to piece together what I'd just learned. My mind kept circling back to her words, "It's just sex, and you're overreacting." Yeah, right. I knew her well enough to know she was a master at twisting things around, making herself the victim, the misunderstood. That bitchy attitude, the way she always played the innocent victim, she'd turn any situation to her favor. I realized I couldn't just confront her again and expect honesty. Not anymore. When I finally went back to the room, she was pretending to be absorbed in her phone, as if nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to shake her, scream at her, make her see how much she'd hurt me, but I knew that wouldn't help. Instead, I decided I needed to take control. I needed a plan. I spent the rest of the morning pretending to be calm, even as every nerve in my body was screaming. I carefully searched her purse while she was in the bathroom, just enough to find her hotel keycard in her purse, a few receipts from a nearby coffee shop, and her phone. I couldn't imagine what I'd find, but I had to look. I was already prepared for the worst. When she came out, I casually asked her about her plans for the afternoon. She shrugged and said she wanted to explore the area. Maybe go for a walk. I told her I'd stay in and relax, but I knew I wouldn't be doing that. I was going to find out everything I could, no matter how much it hurt. I unlocked her phone with the passcode I'd seen her use 1,000 times before her birthday. It was simple, obvious, but I felt sick doing it. What I found was a treasure trove of evidence. Texts, pictures, and a string of messages with Chris, more than I could have ever expected. They'd been meeting up, talking about plans, even discussing how they'd keep it secret from everyone. The messages were explicit, full of sexual talk, and one particular photo of Emily in a hotel room, wearing nothing but a silk robe, with her legs spread just enough for the camera to catch her bare sex. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was in a nightmare. My wife, Emily, had been cheating on me during our supposed weekend of healing, and she didn't even care how obvious she'd been. She was so confident, so dismissive, like she'd already decided I was too stupid or too naive to find out. I felt a mixture of disgust, helplessness, and rage. How could she do this to us? To me? After everything we'd been through, she had thrown it all away for some meaningless sex with a guy she barely knew. I snapped the phone shut and sat down on the bed, my head in my hands. I was shattered. For a few minutes, I just stared at the wall, trying to process what I'd uncovered. My entire life, my entire marriage, felt like it was crashing down around me. I had so many questions, so many feelings. I was furious at her for being so manipulative, so careless. I was heartbroken because I still loved her, even after everything. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't know if I'd ever recover from it. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had enough evidence to confront her properly and decide what I was going to do. I didn't want to be the fool standing there, blind and betrayed. I wanted her to see what she'd done, to understand the damage she'd caused. I knew that the moment I brought this all out, our lives would never be the same. And honestly, I was scared of what was coming next. The moment I sat there staring at her phone, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. My mind was racing, and I felt like I was about to explode from the inside out. I had the evidence. I had her messages, her photos, everything. But I also knew that confronting her with it all would be the biggest fight of my life. Still, I couldn't just let her get away with it, not without making her face what she'd done. I took a deep breath and decided to call her bluff. I told her I knew everything about Chris, about the hotel, about the sex. Her reaction was classic Emily, scoffing, dismissive, trying to gaslight me. She said I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of something she didn't do, even though I had all the screenshots to prove it. She called me crazy, said I was imagining things, and that I was overreacting as usual. That fire in her eyes, the way she lied so effortlessly, it made me realize she'd been doing this for a while, probably during our therapy weekends, maybe even before that. I stood in the room, furious, feeling betrayed and humiliated all at once. I told her I was done playing her game, that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I told her I knew she'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and that I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I told her I was leaving, right then and there, if she didn't come clean. Her face twisted into something ugly, her contempt, her bitchiness, her complete lack of remorse. She yelled at me, called me a jealous fool, said I was insecure, that I had no right to control her. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with someone who didn't even care about our marriage, about the vows we took. She was more interested in her little affair, her little secret life. Her tone was so bitchy, so dismissive, I couldn't believe I'd ever trusted her. I was trembling with rage, but I kept my voice steady. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and a manipulative bitch. I told her I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore, that I deserved better than her lies and her bullshit. That confrontation ended with her storming out of the room, her heels clicking on the floor as she went to pack her things. I watched her go, feeling a weird mixture of relief and despair. I was relieved because I finally knew the truth, but devastated because I'd just lost the woman I'd loved for so many years. I knew I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for her, to try and fix this, or to cut her out of my life altogether. While she was gone, I sat alone on the bed, staring at the evidence I had gathered. Every message, every photo, every lie she'd told. I realized I had all the ammunition I needed to end this once and for all. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or make me doubt myself anymore. I had to take control, even if it meant burning everything to the ground. Because what she'd done was unforgivable, and I knew I wouldn't be able to look at her the same way again. Not after discovering she'd been lying, cheating, and playing me for the fool all this time. After she left the room, I sat there trembling, my mind racing through every possible reaction, every outcome. I knew I couldn't just let her walk away from this, not anymore. I had enough evidence to destroy her in every way possible, but I also knew that emotionally, this was going to be a wrecking ball that would shatter everything we had. I didn't want to be a guy who just snapped and threw her out, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore what I'd found. I grabbed my phone and took a few deep breaths, trying to steady myself. I knew I had to get ahead of her. If she thought she could deny, manipulate, or lie her way out of this, I'd be lost. I was going to make her face the consequences. I started drafting a message so I could stay calm and collected. I told her that I knew about her affair with Chris, that I had all the proof I needed, and that she was a liar, a cheat, and a manipulative bitch. I also told her I was done playing her games and that I wanted her to come back and talk to me like an adult, or she could forget about us. While I waited, I kept replaying everything: her sneaky texts, her smirk when she thought I wasn't looking, that damn photo of her in the hotel. I felt sick, but also oddly empowered. This was the first time in years I was finally taking control. I was tired of her bullshit, her lies, her bitchy attitude that she used to dismiss me. I realized I had to be ready for whatever came next because I knew she was going to fight back hard. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was her. She was crying, trying to beg, acting like a victim. She said she was sorry, that it was all a mistake, that she loved me and didn't mean for it to happen. Her voice was trembling, her tone so bitchy yet so manipulative. She kept insisting it was just sex, that she was confused, and that she'd stop seeing Chris. I listened, feeling a mix of anger and disgust. I knew it was all lies. She had already lied so many times, what difference did it make? I decided to play hardball. I told her she needed to leave, that she wasn't welcome to stay anymore. I told her I was done with her manipulations, her lies, her little games. I said I'd call a lawyer if she didn't get out of my sight. For the first time, I saw her crack. Her bitchy mask slipped for a second and she started crying even more, begging me to forgive her, saying she'd change. But I was done. I told her she needed to grow up, face what she did, and accept the consequences. Her tears didn't move me anymore. I was exhausted, betrayed, and sick of being played like a fool. As she finally packed her things and hurried out, I felt this strange wave of relief mixed with despair. I knew everything was about to change, our lives, our future, everything. I had no illusions anymore. She was the cheater, the manipulator, the liar, and I was the guy who finally saw her for what she really was. I sat alone in my room, staring at the door she just left through, feeling hollow but also strangely free. For the first time in a long time, I realized I had to rebuild myself from this mess. And honestly, I didn't know if I'd ever fully trust again, but I knew one thing: I was done accepting her bullshit. I deserved better. I just had to figure out what that really meant now. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The house was eerily quiet without her bitchy comments or her manipulative smirk. I kept replaying everything: the texts, the photos, her lies. Honestly, I was devastated, but there was also a strange sense of liberation. For so long, I had been blind to her true nature, willing to overlook her manipulations because I loved her and wanted to believe in us. Now, I saw her for exactly what she was: someone who played with my emotions, who thought she could cheat and lie her way through our marriage and get away with it. I knew I had to make some tough decisions. I didn't want to be bitter or vengeful, but I also knew I had to protect myself, emotionally, financially, legally. I contacted a lawyer, started the process of separation, and made plans to get my own place. I didn't want her coming back, trying to manipulate me or dragging me through court. I wanted her out of my life completely, and honestly, I felt a strange sense of clarity. When I realized I'd been a fool, that I'd let her walk all over me for so long, I knew I had to rebuild. Throughout this process, I learned a few things. First, never ignore your gut. When you feel something off, trust yourself. Second, don't be afraid to confront the truth, no matter how painful it is. And third, never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your own peace. Emily's constant bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all showed me how little she cared about us. She was just using me, and I was finally waking up. Looking back now, I realize I've grown stronger from this ordeal. I've learned to value myself more, to stand up for my feelings, and to understand that sometimes love isn't enough. Not when someone is willing to betray you like that. I've also come to terms with the fact that people like her will always find ways to lie and manipulate, but I don't have to be a victim anymore. I can walk away, rebuild, and be better for it. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't let a manipulative partner gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. If you catch signs of cheating or betrayal, confront it early. And if it's true, don't be afraid to walk away. Because in the end, your sanity, your dignity, and your happiness matter more than any lie they try to spin. I'm still healing, but I'm finally free. And honestly, that feels a lot better than I thought it ever could.